Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. I'm your host, Lauren,
And I'm Yiannah.
and this week we are doing a deep dive of the number 21, and we are being joined by a guest and fellow practitioner, Tina. Hi, Tina.
Yay!
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, Tina and I know each other from our practitioner trainings. We took two trainings together. And this is really the first time that Tina and Yiannah are meeting. And we really had to stop ourselves from getting into too much details already. We're like, save it for the show. So here we
Totally.
are. I'm really excited for you all to really meet and for us to jump into this beautiful but challenging number.
And it's funny because when you meet someone who is also doing soul contracts, it's like your immediate response is like, I don't care like what your life was like. I don't care what you do. It's like you start speaking energy, you start speaking numbers. Like that's how you kind of start assimilating like, okay, this person does this or has this, and like this is what's played out in their lives. So you and I, it's like Lauren just said, we just met, but we just quickly you just go into that. And I love that. It's just such a natural and fun thing to like get to share with people.
Okay. And so, Tina, you are a soul contract practitioner. You're also divine healer, and you have a great YouTube channel where when people have passed away, we've talked about already the ethics. You don't look at anybody's chart unless they've passed away. So you will channel them in and you look at their chart, you talk about their chart, but then you channel them and you bring through these messages. So it's a very kind of special and unique take on, the soul contract. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started my channel, The Alignment Keys, to try to help showcase the soul contract. And for me, the best way to do that was to look at celebrities or well-known people. They're not all celebrities, but to show people their soul contracts, after they have crossed over. And I also, pull some oracle cards and get messages from them during the reading to kind of pull together what they would like to share. So again, it's just a really great way to show people how those numbers can play out in everybody's lives, because how they impact us and why we chose them, and give them a little bit of answers maybe to something they're dealing with in their life. So that's why I put that together.
Yeah, there have been times where, a celebrity has passed away. I run straight to their chart to go look at it because I'm like, oh, I can look now. And then I'll usually message you about it. I'll be like, have you looked at this person's chart yet? What do you think? Oh, this is so on point. And someone recently that we did that with was Matthew Perry. And I
Yes.
remember both of us being like, wow, this really makes sense for what we know about his life.
Yeah, it really did. And yeah, Lauren's always throwing things over, going, did you look at these numbers of this person? And yeah, so it's really very fun that we can chat back and forth that way and get into the depth of the numbers and what the meaning behind them was for that particular person. So it's very
Yeah.
fun.
And another example is someone who has the number we're talking about today, the 21-3, is I looked up Queen Elizabeth II, like the name Queen Elizabeth II. And
Yes,
there was like, I think there was multiple 21-3s in there. There was at
yes.
least one. I was like, well, this makes sense.
Okay, should we get into the 21 threes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You want
So,
to start us
yes.
off our intro?
So sure. I mean, look, the 21 threes, I think as a practitioner, the first thing you think of is hardship,
Mhm.
endurance, strength. They're like these warriors, but like they have to in their life. It's like they signed up to experience these really difficult situations and relationships and experiences in their lives that are not meant to break you or for you to crumble in despair. It is meant for you to say, you know what? I don't have to be stuck in this. I don't have to live in this. I find my inner strength and I'm going to get my endurance. I'm going to break out of it. And then I'm going to share that strength with those threes, share that strength and that courage with other people. So now I know, um, Tina, you have 21 threes in your chart, which makes you such a perfect person to deep dive into this. So can you tell us about the placements in your chart for that as we get into it?
Yes, yes. So the placements for me in my chart is I have a 21-3 in spiritual karma, and I also have a 21-3 in my physical goals. And that kind of adds a little bit of a different flavor because whenever your number matches between your spiritual and your physical, it's really meant for you to work through that physical aspect first before you can start working through your spiritual side. So it was really critical for me to basically just about master that physical goal side before I could start really tapping into the energy of that spiritual karma to try to work through the negatives because we do get a lot of the negatives pulling in from that number. So it was really then for me on a more spiritual side to start working through that so I could activate my talents and start working towards my spiritual goals in this life.
Yeah, because it's a number that already talks about hardship, and then literally you have the extra difficulty of not only having it in your chart twice, but where they are is like its own, that is itself the expression of the 21-3, which is that usually because it's about enduring hardship, it's that it attracts in hardship to be endured. So that's kind of like even where it is in your chart is sort of the 21-3 energy at work, to be honest.
Now,
Yeah.
in our work too, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we came on air, was that as a practitioner, you oftentimes attract people with the same energies in your chart. And it's like as if like you're like their greatest teacher because you're like, oh, I've lived this. I know what it means. I embody it. And now you can share it and discuss it in a way that's like so much more. It's like amplified, if you will. So how's that showing up for you when you do have people with 21-3s in their charts that come to you?
Yeah, it's been incredible how often that happens that they have 21-3s in their chart. And of course, it's again a vibrational thing. So you're going to vibrate to you people that are on similar journeys. And for me, it was also mutually beneficial. I could give them a lot of support because of all of the things that I've been through. And usually I would learn something new. And it may be just because of how the other aspects are placed, because again, it isn't just specifically about that number and that aspect. The other numbers tend to have an influence as well. So again, you get a little bit of a different flavor because people have different aspects in their chart. And so I learned a lot from other people as well during those sessions because they were able to open up some things that I hadn't experienced before with the 21-3.
So let's get into some of the things that, 21-3, if it is going to be a karmic placement in your life, like what does that look like? How does that show up generally and then in your own experience?
Yeah, so the 21-3 for me, when you have it in karma, and what I've learned, spiritual karma is a little bit different than physical karma. And so again, we did talk about the 21-3 is tied, to endurance, building great inner strength. And it's using the components of intelligence and
Yes.
durability and all these different things. So you're going to be challenged with those. And for me, it ended up being a very tough childhood. A lot of manifested a lot of abuse and those types of things. Not that, abuse it has different levels, and it's never about choosing. We don't come here to choose severe abuse. But challenges are a different thing. And the 21-3 can definitely bring that in because people with 21-3s actually gravitate towards challenging things. And on the spiritual side for me, it was having this very tough childhood, where there was a lot of abuse. Both of my parents were alcoholics. I had 5 other siblings. So we didn't get the emotional care, and we were having to build this inner strength basically on our own. And that is a flavor of it in a karmic aspect. So if that 21-3 would have been in physical karma, that could be more physically based challenges, such as you could have chronic fatigue syndrome. It's a very heavy energy. And it's really important for people with that number to, exercise and do things to help shake off that. I think of that Taylor Swift song, Shake It Off.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
really,
perfect.
really important for people with a 21-3 in karma to have some type of a movement in their life to help shake that heavy energy off.
Absolutely. Because people with 21 threes, it's such a powerful number, right? But again, if that's going to be in your karma, if it's a challenge, it can feel really blocked. So they feel like this power is blocked or creativity is blocked. It's interesting in the system how those words will often kind of be used together.
Yes.
But what happens is that people feel like they're actually really, really lazy. It's like they have all this power and they can't access it. And that's, it's interesting if we bring in that three, and this is something I think about a lot with the threes in terms of emotions. It's like, I know I have this depth of emotion and like I can't access it or really feel or process my emotions. And so you can kind of think about that with the 21. It's like your power is down there too.
Yes, that's very true. There's many times in my life where I felt very stuck, and that's a definite correlation to this number. It causes a lot of stuckness. But again, it's a little bit of an illusion, the stuckness, because in that stuck energy is you're really are building that inner strength. You're meant to pop out of that. And so it's keeping you stuck because there's something it's trying to show you. And if you can take that deep dive into that number, you can really help, because that comes more from the 21 side, that heaviness. The threes are more, can be this very emotional frozenness almost. And so then it's meant for you to really start to force yourself to have to express yourself and movement and those types of things. So that has been my experience with it on the karmic side. Now, with it being in the physical side, I ended up gravitating more towards endurance sports and things like that.
Interesting.
So because it's in a goal, so you're striving for something. And so for me, that's how I ended up building a lot of that strength and pushing myself, which builds a lot of confidence and leadership qualities, which is also tied to the three, because I would push myself to do these long, and I did triathlons, I did some long endurance running, things like that, and that would help break you out of that. Now on a more, because it was in my physical goals, it's also about, leadership and teaching. I was an accountant, but the trick with the 21-3 is it's also a number that's considered jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's also meant to push you to the next level. And so before I could really activate my karmic side of the 21-3, I really had to master something on my physical side. So for many years, I worked as an accountant, but I never got my CPA. I was doing the job already, but I never had that self-worth, which is something the threes are always building on. And so I finally had to go through this exercise where I had to master this physical side before I could really start to come into more of my spiritual side. And so that was once I started doing some divine healing and things to help with some of the trauma that I was still carrying from that very traumatic childhood. Could I start to really set those goals and really push myself a little bit harder, even in the endurance world and in the, in my professional world as well.
And it's interesting that you were an athlete, because often people with this number are athletes, or you see it often in athletes, and it's so true. It's that endurance.
Well, also part of the talent of the 21 is that like they have these like big goals and they're goal oriented and they love like achieving goals. So that whole endurance, it's like, here's the dream and I'm going to get there. But it's about breaking through that tough karmic element to get into that positive aspect. And you know what's interesting? I have found when I have read some people who have 21 threes. I'll get one of two responses. Either they'll say, yes, the hardship in my life was so much and no one should have to go through that. Or they'll say, you know, I didn't really experience that much hardship. And what I've realized was, as we talk about how all the other energies play in your chart, they every time they say that to me, they have a 5 in their chart because the 5s are optimistic, their cup is half full. So it's almost like they downplay what they've gone through because it's like this innate, like, you know, it's okay. Like I went through it. It's okay. And it wasn't a big deal, but you're like, wow, like you really persevered. You really found that inner strength because the 21 could really defeat people if you're not consciously working up getting out of it. So when you do throw in those other elements, it's like at first, like I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh my God, am I not reading this correctly? But then as you see how they all work together, you're like, okay, this is why it's not that they're minimizing what they went through, but their glass is half full and they're looking at the bright side. Okay, I went through it, it's fine, and this is who I am now.
Yeah, I would entirely agree with that because I have 5s in my chart as well. And I did, you know, downplay a lot of that until I really got into the divine healing and started to really, I think it's a little bit of the 5s protect you a little bit in that respect. You know, they give you a little bit of that, like you said, that optimism and the rose colored glasses and those types of things. And it is a little bit of a protective measure, especially when you're going through, because that's what gets you up every day and keeps you facing the world until you end up, you know, building that great inner strength. And then what I found is, you know, in my work career, I would pick jobs that I would go in and the place is just a mess. I would pick these big challenges. But now that I've done my work and I've realized I don't have to pick those challenges. I can pick a job that is, you know, really nice and comfortable and, you know, and not that easy. Easy's not very good for people with 21s. They do like a challenge, but it doesn't have to be a total mess though either. And I would pick these really, so I was creating hardship for myself. See, it's again, you have to start to break through those illusions, and that when you have it in karma, that is what you're meant to do, is to start to understand it and be like, I don't need to do that anymore. I've learned that lesson.
And, you know, that's something that we talk about with the 21-3 is like the tendency to kind of do things the hard way. And Yiannah, the way you were talking about with these people with 5s, that they'll be like, oh, I haven't had hardships. Like sometimes I've done readings for people and they're like, I don't think I do things the hard way. And I'm like, well, you know, think about it. A lot of us, like within the United States, or sometimes I might read for someone who's like from Germany or something. And it's like, well, we live in these cultures that dictate something kind of needs to be done in a way, and that would devalue if you took an easier way. Like I saw this on a TikTok where they were talking about that. Like, why do we have in our mindset if you did it the easy way, it's suddenly the result is worthless? Like not worthless, worth less. It's like it is the same, but in our culture, in our mind, we value it less if we made it easy. And so sometimes I've said to them, I'm like, well, do you really think you don't do things the hard way, or do you think you do it like everybody else and we're all doing it the hard way? And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. And I do recognize that when I do much better now recognize when I am doing something the hard way because it's so difficult. I'm recognizing my intuition now and, you know, the vibrations around me that no, it should not be this hard. You need to take a step back. And what's really funny is I started to recognize that number in other people that I worked with. And then I would do their chart and be like, because I would be like, they're always trying to do things the hard way. They're always overcomplicating things. And it's just because I've learned my lessons. I can see that now. And I'm like, we don't have to make this hard. So it is funny because I used to be that way. I would overcomplicate things. And I'm like, I'm going to make this, you know, as hard as I possibly can to get through.
Now, how long would you say that it really took to kind of be able to make that switch for anybody who's in that place right now, who's like, yeah, I do it the hard way. And why can't I just flip it? Like, how long did that take for you? It takes time.
Oh, it takes time because you have to have a lot of self-awareness. And this is the journey we're all on, right? This is why
Yeah.
we want to know our soul contracts, or we, want to know astrology. Because they're all tools to help us learn more about ourselves so we can become more self-aware. So everybody's different. I mean, for me, it took a long time because I just had a lot of trauma, a lot of, past stuff that I hadn't really dealt with. And but once I started to motor through that, then things started to come fairly quickly. It took a few years, but fairly quickly. Now I always say I'm late to the party. I have a 12-3 too. We won't talk about that. I'm always late to the party, but I'm getting it now, and
Yeah.
I think everything is divine timing. And so, we can talk about, you mentioned Queen Elizabeth. She had in that name, there were 3 threes.
There were three of
And
them. I remember being like,
yes,
wow.
yes. And it's all about endurance. And, if you think about the hardship and endurance, and it's all about building stability. When you choose that number, when you come here, you're putting yourself in that arena because you want that. I'm going to say she's a much more elevated soul because of what she accomplished, and that's usually by how many times you've incarnated, what you're ready to take on, and those types of things. But
Mhm.
yeah, I was shocked when I saw how many 21 threes were in her name.
I had a thought as y'all were just talking about the fives, because if you think about it, right, the fives are so intuitive, they're so spiritual. And I wonder, Yiannah, if these fives, when you have a five in your chart, the reason you look at those challenges differently is because they kind of have this more spiritual perspective, right? And our souls know why we chose these challenges, that it's for our evolution and our growth. And they don't resent them. They don't think that this was something that shouldn't have happened. They're like, yeah, this happened for this reason. And there's just this acceptance of it and kind of maybe a neutrality from the soul's perspective of this was for a purpose, the divine purpose, if you will. So that idea is just kind of coming to me of like that relationship.
Yes, because the fives are so ethereal and you're kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't want to say lost in space, but you're always like over here. And it's like, I think that's the difference when someone can look at, for example, the 21, the hardship, and say, okay, on a human level, I would never sign up for this. But on
Mhm.
a soul level, I came to do this, to break free from it, to endure from it, to like succeed and to not be stuck in it. And it's funny because when you do talk to people who have been through tough things in their life, but they're still like, they're not fully into their spiritual side or really haven't really opened up to all these possibilities, they'll say, well, I would never choose this. I would never choose to go through this. So there's no way that like there's some reality where I would have done that. And I'm like, yeah, as a human, you would never pick the challenges that you have. You would say, I would never sign up to hurt somebody and I would never sign up for somebody to hurt me. But it's like on the soul level, how else are you going to ascend? How else are you going to grow? That's what our
Yes.
purpose is in these incarnations. And it is like when you do have somebody who has a five, their perspective is just so different in the toughest of circumstances. And I don't want to say that it's a benefit to have it because it's a benefit to have all the numbers. They all have they
Yeah.
all have the beautiful positive aspects of them.
And they have
But
their own challenges as well.
totally, yes. And and some people are like, when they see their numbers, are these good? Well, they're all good and they're all
Yes.
challenging. So it's like,
Yeah.
where are you stuck? Where are you within the energies? Are you still in the really
Yep.
dark, heavy, challenging aspect? Or are you now starting to transmute that karma? So let me ask you with the 21 threes, Tina, because of the hardship level, when you do have people that come to you with that, do you find that most of them are still stuck in that? Or do you find that most of them have started to work through or have kind of like surpassed the challenging aspect of it?
So it does depend on the other numbers in their chart. So if they have weaker talents, um, they will most likely be still stuck in it. If they have stronger talents, they are much more aware of, when I say to them what all of that adds up to be, they get it. They're like, oh yeah, this is what's going on. So yeah, definitely plays out a little differently depending on the numbers around it, but it can be a very daunting energy. Obviously, when we do baby naming, we try to avoid having
Yeah.
21 threes in a baby's chart. But again, I wouldn't do it any differently because I just know that this was in for my, benefit and the overall picture. And so I'm in a really good place in my life. So I can look back at it as all, helping me. I wouldn't change any of it to get where I am.
I want to ask you a question with that because we talked about baby naming. Have you come across, because I haven't had this yet because I do lots of like parents who are like, I want to know how to help my child, like what challenges they may face, and maybe they're going through something now. How can we like move past that? And what's the best way for me to support them? And I love that part of it because it's like, yes, like you're a parent who is looking to open their minds up to every way of how to assist and help your child like break through whatever they're going through. But I haven't come across a parent who has a child with any 21 threes. Have you, in your experience, seen that parent relationship where the child may have a 21 3, but the child's still really young? So it's not like they've had this full life to experience it. And then how do you share that with the parent?
Well, actually, one of my grandchildren has that
Oh,
21
Wow.
3. And
okay, but
so,
they got the name before you ever looked into it. Okay.
yes,
Do
yeah.
tell, do tell.
So that's why. So again, it's more in a talent aspect. So it isn't going to be as daunting as,
Yeah.
you're going to get some of the negative traits, but again, most people are working through their karma and none of them have it in a karmic aspect. So for me, that's not definitely as, iffy. I have not seen that in a child, a 21 3 that I've dealt with. So in the karmic aspect, but my one grandchild has that, and if it's in a talent, so it provides a lot of great endurance and great intelligence because it's tied to intelligence as well. So it has some, again, everything has that positive, negative, but again, it can always bring a little bit of a hardship aspect to it. So people have to be very aware of that. Are you creating hardship? Are you, what is happening in your life? And that's why it's really important to know your numbers and know what's happening in your life so that you don't set yourself up with patterns. So at least I was able to have that conversation with my daughter, about what that number signifies, that he has like his grandma.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about the 21 3 is that it has this representation that the soul of Solomon is able to come in if you have this number in your chart and burn away separation programming.
Yeah.
And, it's almost kind of this preparation, if you will, to like the 22 4, which is very all about that connection to source. And it's kind of like, the 21 3, you can burn away some of that separation programming. So again, talking about depends where this is in your chart. For me, if I ever see someone has a 22 4 as their physical karma, but then 21 3 as physical goals, I actually think that's a great match because the 22 4 is such a powerful number. You need a very powerful number in talents, as with if you have 21 3 in your karma, you need a powerful number in talents.
Yeah.
So 21 3, even though it can be especially challenging as its own challenge as karma, it's a powerful number. So it is really up there with being able to stand up to some of those other powerful numbers.
Yeah. Yes. You just have to be, again, you just have to know your chart and understand the numbers around it and what you might be pulling off of those numbers to help you create the hardship. Because that's, again, that hardship number will try to pull negative vibrations off of the other numbers to create the hardship, but you have all the power to create and not create things in your life. So again, it's that self-awareness and learning the tools to deal with the numbers on your chart,
Yeah.
especially that 21-3.
And that is the thing with 21-3 when it's in talents, it's that you have all that power within you. And so when you are able to connect to that, you know, we talk about, right, they can move mountains, they can do so
Yes.
much, accomplish so much. You know, we've
Mhm.
talked about that goal getter attitude, right? Like
Yeah.
as it is powerful, they can do so much. It's just that it's also challenging. It can be quite challenging.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Nobody wants to be like, I didn't come down here to make everything as hard as possible. But again, it's all about that growth, like Yiannah says. It's really there's a lot of the numbers you wouldn't pick if you knew what you could pull in off of them, and if you're not aware, you know, because all of the things we pull in usually is at a very unconscious level. So
And you
to
know,
make
it's
us conscious.
yeah, it is. It's all about that consciousness. And it's interesting for me. I recently just changed, just a couple days ago, changed my name on Instagram to I am Lauren Rose from the naming lady. And Lauren Rose is my first and middle name. And when I first looked at that chart, it's it's a challenging one. It's one that if you were to look at it objectively, practitioners would be like, wow, because there's a lot of fives. It's like two double fives and two 14 fives, and there's a 21-3 as the physical talent and a 7-7. And it's like it's not it would not be an easy chart. Granted, it's not my birth chart, right? It's first and middle name. Like it's the sort of thing I would question, is this even running? Is this even active? But then there are enough times of, you know, the who am I's and the I do kind of do things the hard way that I'm like, it's there somewhere. And it is so interesting because I feel like I almost didn't want to change that to my name on the Instagram because I was like, I don't want to call it that hardship. I don't want to call it the ungroundedness of the fives. And I was really sitting with it. And then I was sitting there and I really kind of had this moment of like, I'm embracing this. I'm not afraid of it. And it's like I could feel this rush of power come in when I had really come to this place of I'm not going to push this way and reject it. I'm going to embrace it. And it's like literally could just feel that coming into my body. It was wild.
But also, Lauren, one
Yes.
of the beautiful talents about the 21 is that it's like people with this energy, they chose this incarnation to be of service to God. Like they're here to like serve source, and like what a beautiful, I mean, like that's what we're here to do, find our way back to source, right? We're playing this game of I'm born, I remember nothing, I know something, I'm going through life, but the whole point of it is at the end to find our way back to source. And the 21s in their like the part of the talent, the gift is that you're actually here to serve, like on behalf of source. And I just think as a spiritual woman myself, one where I'm like, yeah, I want to follow my spiritual journey and I want to be an example to others and I want to help and I want to share. Like, what a beautiful thing to add into like your journey already, you know? And it's like, yes, of course, we always go to the, okay, what's the negative? What's the challenging thing of this
Yes.
number? And it's so easy to stay there and be like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want that. But then when you look at, okay, I may have to go through X, but I get Z, like that's amazing. You know, and that's with
Yes.
every number, but especially with this one. So it's so important to focus on the positive aspect of it. Because as we keep talking about the 21 challenges, it could almost sound defeating, you know?
Yes. And to add to that, because that was a beautiful, beautiful explanation of it. To add to that is you can pick your hardship. And so I have it in my spiritual karma, and I choose to fast. I had it in my physical goals, and I choose to run long distant triathlons. I did a half Ironman. So you can choose your hardship with this number. You don't have to let the universe send you some hardship, you know, to deal with. You can choose it for yourself. And again, Lauren, you're choosing rather than allowing the universe to dictate. And that's, again, you're taking your power back when you do that.
What a beautiful way to think about it. And because one of the things I had thought about was like, life is going to have hardships anyway. Like the hardships are there. It's not like you're going to have no hardships without this number,
Exactly.
you know? And so it really, for me, it was just like, I had been in a fear place of, oh, well, life is already hard enough. I'm going to call more of this in. It's like, but you're also calling in the energy to endure anything that comes across your path, you know?
Mhm. I love
Yes.
that.
And, you know, I already have a 12-3 soul destiny. So that 3 energy is already very core in my chart. And of course, it is teaching from the soul. All that we've been talking about, you know, I think about, especially for ourselves as practitioners. And Tina, you were even talking about at work, you would start to see these numbers in people and you start to say to them, to teach them, it doesn't need to be this way.
Yeah.
Right. For those, because again, we're talking about it can feel a little overwhelming because this number just is a lot. But then it's like you need to kind of have gone through it and got yourself unstuck in order to be the example and to be able to teach others how to also work through this energy.
Yes, that's the goal now. Now that
Yeah.
I've gone through all that, is to help others, deal with, that number and other numbers. But yeah, that's a toughie, that 21-3.
When you do get somebody who does have a 21-3, do you secretly get so excited? You're like, yes, like I know exactly how to help them get through this. We're going to do this together kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I don't want people to be fearful of it, like we had talked about earlier. And, people start to read the numbers and they're like, oh, why would I choose that? Oh, my God. And you have to kind of show them how far they've come and to be appreciative of having that number because it has a lot of great qualities as well. So, again, it's just that self-awareness.
Yeah,
love
early
that.
on in my time doing readings, I definitely had some friends that I was reading for who had 21-3s. And same thing. I'd like, I don't want you to get scared and hearing this, you know, frame it that positivity, right? 12-3s is also rose-colored glasses energy. So there's that I'm bringing as well. But what I would always say to them is like, yes, your soul chose this and it was ready to choose this. You know, that's if you think about I would use school as an analogy. I was like, we don't teach calculus to kindergartners. It took you a long time and a lot of work and time learning before you were ready for this lesson.
Yeah, and this is something you carry from lifetime to lifetime. So again, everything is serving a purpose.
Beautiful. Well, I think we have given a very good in-depth overview of this number, which again can be so challenging. I think we should maybe end it on a little bit more of a positive note. Any encouraging words of wisdom that come from that talent, how that talent has really helped propel you.
Oh, I mean, it has definitely helped in becoming more of a master in my own life. So it pushes you to, and gives you, with the threes, with the initiative of the leadership, it gives you a lot of strength. So even if you have it in a karmic position, you're getting more out of it, as you become more aware of it, and you'll pull the right aspects to that. So absolutely, it has a great benefit. And I've looked up a lot of people with that number and they've been very successful. So it does adds, like I said, that level of mastery to it.
Love
Yeah,
that.
any final thoughts?
You know, I just think like what a perfect way to honor this energy. Um, because there's such beauty in it. I mean, look, even if you look at like in the spiritual goals aspect, you're here to be a spiritual teacher. Like you are like you are doing the thing and it's like it's so beautiful. And this is a perfect example. Tony Robbins, and I've never ran his chart. I don't know what his numbers are, but if you follow him, his story is he had a very difficult childhood, especially with his mother, very challenging. And he will say, he said, if I didn't have the childhood and the mother that I experienced, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Right.
So all of those challenges, all of that hardship is where he said, you know what? Not for me. That's not going to be my story. And it absolutely propelled him into what he is today. And he's
Yes.
standing in his power and what he's doing is absolutely magnificent. So it's like, this is the energy I get. It's like, that's the example. Like when I close my eyes, I'm like, that's what I see. And you have it in you. And it's such a beautiful way to honor this energy because it's just, the power is just amazing. It's amazing.
It is. I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tina, why don't you let our listeners know where they can find you?
So I can be reached on YouTube at The Alignment Keys, and I do have a website, thealignmentkeys.net. And you can look me up there. So thank you guys so much for allowing me to come in and talk about my wonderful 21 threes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, everybody, don't forget to check us out on Instagram, Let's Talk Vibes Podcast, and then on our website as well, theltvpodcast.com.
And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our content. It is the best way to support us. And we love and appreciate you all. Have a beautiful day.